Hello, and today I'm with screenwriter Josh Ellis, and we're going to be discussing screenwriting.
Hey, good to be here, man.
Thank you for joining me today. Um, so to start off with, I have a question about how long does it take for you to write an average screenplay?
Well, it depends really on the project itself. Like the way I approach a project is I'll think about a couple of cool concepts and see if it can work, and then I'll start outlining it, and then from the outline I'll start writing character profiles, and then from character profiles I'll see if I'll go from there. On average, probably takes me about 3 weeks to get a first draft ready. But then, in all honesty, when a completely finished screenplay with like what 2-3 drafts probably takes about 2 months to do. Yeah, I'd say about 3 weeks first draft, 2 months to complete fully.
Oh well, that's really interesting. Um, well, what do you start with? Structure or the scenes of what you're about to write? Do you have any pre-planned?
How I usually try and do it is when I do my outline, I'll always pinpoint where the structure points will be. So, for example, my outline will be Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. But when there's a plot point that's important, I'll underline it so I know that's part of the structure. So it's like, okay, so that bit's got to that bit, and this is how we get to this bit. And so I'll always think about cool scenes, but it's no good having cool scenes if you've got no structure to go with it. A story is always held by like structure. Cool scenes are good, but without a structure in place, a good strong structure, there's no point really in having these cool scenes, because it's just like it's like basically a Michael Bay film. A lot of like style but no substance.
Kind of just like instead of like all of the explosions, you have lots of deaths and gore, but if there's nothing concrete behind it, then what is the point in having the screenplay completed?
Was exactly that. Like the whole thing of a screenplay is it's meant to be a visual story, and that's all a screenplay is. It's meant to be a visual story for a film.
Yeah.
If you're just having explosions, you might as well just go on YouTube and watch explosions. Do you know what I mean? Screenplays are about story, and if there's no story, then it's not a screenplay. It's just a series of events. So you should always start with structure as opposed to cool scenes.
Cool. Thank you. And my next question would be, as you mentioned, it would take like a 2 month period for you to complete a script. How would you know by that two month period has come to a close? How do you know that the script will be ready, like to send off or to save, as this is the final draft?
That's a really good question. I think it's mainly gut instinct. I mean, there's a thing that with writers that writers are never fully satisfied with their product. Never. Like you could have written like The Godfather and that you still would be satisfied with it. I think you've just got to go on instinct, and like no matter how many times you redraft it, if your gut instinct tells you it's ready, you know it's ready. I mean, if you finished it ahead of schedule, then chances are there's still work to be done to it, because you haven't really, in my eyes, gone through like the full depth that you need to go through in order to complete the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like you can have it done in like 2 weeks, but if it's not fully fleshed out with like good interesting characters, an intriguing storyline, and a cool concept, do you know what I mean? You've just like done all this work. You've got basically, when you do your first draft, essentially all that is putting out a blueprint. It's then when you go into your second draft and your third draft where you're adding the concrete blocks and building your baby.
Yeah.
So you've got gut instinct when it's ready. Like no one ever has a screenplay ready by the first draft. Never, ever. It's unheard of.
Yeah, because it usually takes me quite a long time myself to go from um, starting it with like the initial ideas to thinking, is it rare now? Is it fully complete? Because as you said, like a screenwriter is never fully happy that they've really essentially told the whole story the best way possible. So the clearest thing that you can get to with that is, as you said yourself. So yeah.
No, it makes total sense, mate. I mean, I think different writers have different ideas and different ways of knowing when their story's ready. But it's just personal opinion. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not the right way. It's not the wrong way. It's just, how I feel in that sense.
Yeah, because every writer is different in how they approach story aspects and the screenwriting process as well. Which is why I find the subject very interesting. So on to the next question, and it would be, what is your favourite genre to write when you write a screenplay? What's the best genre that you feel plays to your strengths?
I think a genre I'm really content and happy writing with is horror. I think horror, in my opinion, is probably the strongest genre out there, in the sense of, like, if you write a comedy, everyone has a different favourite comedian, right? Your favourite comedian's probably different to mine. What I find funny, you won't necessarily find funny. Our idea of love is completely different. Like what we were talking about earlier, you love a certain Robbie Williams, I love a certain Liam Gallagher. So our ideas of love and everyone's ideas of love is different. But I think horror, in a sense, binds us all together as human beings, because we're all afraid of the same basic things. And not in the sense of, I'm scared of clowns, or like I'm scared of spiders, but we're all afraid of death, we're all afraid of losing a loved one, we're all afraid to become disfigured. And I think it's interesting to put all those into a plot, and that's why horror, I think, is the best genre to write for, because if you can nail those three into your story, then audiences can connect. Everybody loves a safe scare, right? We live in a time where there's a lot of scary shit going on in the world, and the greatest release of tension is being in a cinema and having a safe scare. And I think that's why I enjoy writing that genre, because I like the idea of, like, people being scared safely. And people will remember a scary horror film as opposed to a lovely love film.
Yeah, because you get like a thrill from it.
Oh.
And to be on like the edge of your seat, scared, and you're putting yourself in the position to be scared on purpose when you watch a horror film. So is that what you want to bring to people, like a sense of dread for a couple of hours? If your screenplay was made as like a full-length feature film, that is what you want to like bring, like the worst fears to life through your writing.
Yes, that's exactly it. You've nailed it in one there, to be honest. That's the whole idea of like a screenplay, like telling visual stories. And when you write horror, you want your visual stories to be as horrifying as possible, but where people feel satisfied, yet they question their self-decisions. Like, I love the idea of horror that I love is, like, after seeing a good horror film and you're walking out the cinema at night and you're thinking, there's someone around that corner. Yeah. And a good horror film does that to you.
Yeah, because I think where your mind is so active from what you've seen visually, you begin to see what you saw in the film in front of you. Yeah. Like in shadows in a rural room at night with no lights on, yeah. And hearing like voices or mishearing voices.
Yes, yeah.
So you're picking up things that aren't there, but they've been triggered to be there from what you've experienced on film.
No, that's spot on. I think as well when I write, my concept's always been like, it's not the shadows or the darkness you're afraid of. It's what's inside the shadows and the darkness.
Yeah.
It's not what's in the closet it's not the closet that frightens you. Sorry, it's what's behind the closet that frightens you. And I think we live in a society at the moment where we're screaming out for like safe scares, and I think that's why horror's performing really well at the box office at the moment, is because like everybody wants a safe scare, because everything in life at the moment is quite scary with like Trump and that idiot from North Korea. So yeah, I think horror's in a good place at the moment, and if I can like contribute to that with one of my scripts, even better.
Because with that, you're taking the real and blending it with the surreal.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
So you're escaping from everyday life. Even though you're seeing something that looks familiar, there's more to it than your eye can see, and what your mind can comprehend when you watch it.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's just like the main goal for a screenwriter is for people to remember your film. And if you can contribute in horror to like a really, really scary scene, you're winning.
Yeah.
People remember scary scenes more. Like you can think about, The Shining, Here's Johnny,
Yeah.
The Exorcist, Reagan, Halloween, Michael Myers. So if you can contribute in a volatile society with a safe scare, the world's a better place for it.
And there's like an everlasting legacy attached to films. Like, for example, in Psycho, the shower scene, and even kids, like when I was in my teens, would mimic the music and the action, even though they haven't even seen the film, but they know what it is.
Yep.
Because it has that like pop culture
phenomenon sort of thing.
Yeah.
No, you're spot on. I can't believe I didn't think of Psycho first. Psycho probably is the greatest. The shower scene is probably arguably the greatest scene in cinema history, because everyone knows that and Jaws.
Yeah.
So no, that's a really, really good point about Psycho. I'm really impressed with that.
You've mentioned horror as your favourite genre trait, but is there a genre that you'd like to write that you haven't approached, or you've approached only once or twice before, but you consider doing it again or trying something new?
I'm always going to be like settled with horror. Horror to me is always going to be my bread and butter. But as for a genre I haven't written, I think I could conjure up a good love story somewhere. I'd like to have a crack at sci-fi maybe. I do enjoy writing comedy, but I think at the moment I'm currently writing a comedy at the moment, but down the line I've got another story to tell, which is a love story. But I think I'll always be drawn to horror at the end of the day, because horror is just that genre that I adore.
Yeah. Out of the characters that you've written for your horror screenplays, what is the one standout character or characters from the top of your head that you like the most, or comes to mind when you think of what you've wrote?
Okay, so one that stands out, that's just top of my head, is I wrote a horror comedy screenplay about 2 years ago now called Invader, and there's a character in Invader called Richard, who is a rich snob basically, but he's the master of the one-liner, and he was a lot of fun to write, because you just dig deep into like a character you're not, but you can play about with them from like puns you've heard before. And I think he connects with me because like in a time of like absolute crisis, he's just lightening the mood of like stupid one-liners that at the time in the screenplay is not well received, but if you're watching it, you're like, it's a good release of tension. So like when you're watching a horror, there's two ways to release tension. It's either by a laugh or by a jump scare. And Richard's puns release the tension, and the fact is he can make the audience laugh. And I think he is my strongest character in that sense.
Oh, that's fair. Really interesting insight. And I like the fact that it's not like a typical character from horror film. Even though most horror films also like have a comic relief character involved, but they're not usually like the centerpiece. So to have one that is there, and that you put a lot of kind of like an alter ego of yourself as the character, so it's like bring out the side of you that you don't normally associate yourself with as a person, or when you normally write a screenplay. Like, this is not the type of person that that you would often write.
Right, no, that's spot on actually, yeah. I mean, I wish I was as rich as Richard, believe you me. He's got some money, and I bet the tax man loves him as well. But no, I think you are right. Like, when you're writing these screenplays, you like sort of create the characters you sort of want to be or you want to see.
Yeah.
So we're all drawn, in hindsight, we're all drawn to characters when we watch a film that we want to be.
Yeah.
Even if it's like your favourite musician as well. With our favourite musicians, is in a sense the people we want to be through their personality and that. But because we live in that sort of society, we have to like have our own ego, but like admire the ego of what we want.
Yeah.
And that's why like when you write these characters, you keep that in mind, and you create villains who are evil beyond imagination. You create heroes that you wish do heroic things that you wish you could have the courage to do, but you would never do it. And just stuff like that, really.
The real wish fulfillment is brought out when you write, do you think? Like you're putting down on page kind of like an idealized version of yourself or of someone else that you'd like to be.
Yeah, I think that's right, yeah. You've hit nail on the head once again. As I said, it's like, in part of screenplay, writing a script is like, you want to become that character yourself, and like in a sense, when you're like on a project, that like character, those set of characters becomes like family. So like when you finish a screenplay, it's sort of sad because it's like, oh, I'm not going to see these guys again for a while. So you like grow an attachment to the characters in that sense, and like you become them because you have to get into the mindset of, you know, the rich evil bastard, or you know, the heroic homeless guy, or the slutty dog or whatever, you know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with you 100% there.
So I think the wish fulfillment, especially like in creative people, starts when, like you said, when you watch films or TV when you're younger, and like you see clips of the Beatles performing rock and roll songs in front of stadiums filled with their fans, and you feel like, I want to be that like person, that. Yeah. I want to be expressing myself how they express themselves,
yeah.
and the ability to also please people with what you create as well.
Yeah,
it kind of like intertwines and melts in together in a form of where the wish fulfillment is met with your fulfillment of what you want to create. Do you understand?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like when like it goes back to what I was saying about like you see, you know, your favourite band on stage and you're like, oh, I'd love to be adored by millions like that, in sort of a sense, and like you try and create them sort of characters in your screenplay in the hope that people connect with your characters as you connect with that influence you have in your life. Is that the angle you're coming from? Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like, let me 2 seconds. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, if without interesting characters, your story won't work. As simple as that. And like, if you can like take great inspiration from, you know, some of your real life heroes and that, even better. Do you know what I mean? And I think as well, we're in an interesting time because like a load of like nostalgia pieces are being made, like with Bohemian Rhapsody about Freddie Mercury, and like Rocket Man with Elton John, and like people now bringing those characters who were their idols to the big screen to tell their story all over. And I think that's great for cinema, like being able to see the story of some of the world's greatest idols.
Do you think it's also important when you write a screenplay? Not always, but do you think it's a good thing to make it in a way autobiographic, where you put your life in there from a certain point of view?
Yeah, I mean, every story you write, the way I see it, every story I write is I always try to connect a piece of my life into it. Like, not necessarily, like, for example, I spoke about Invader earlier. Now, Invader's about an alien invading Earth, right? Obviously, I have no life experience of that.
Yeah.
Not many people do, apart from E.T. But the story is in that is a main character who's got nothing, and he's at a low point in his life. And when I was writing that, I went back to my times of like going through a low point, and that's how I connected to that story, is because when I was writing my low point, this is exactly how that character was going through his low point, in a sense. So I think you've always got to have some sort of connection with each story you make. Do you know what I mean? It could be as simple as like a low point in your life, or show a character who's just like you, but as long as you have that connection in the story, it'll give it that depth and realism that each story needs. I know, again, Invader's about an alien, so there's not going to be a lot of realism in that, but if you can create characters with real stories that the audience can create like empathy and sympathy with, then I think you're halfway there.
Stephen King was famous for saying that he can identify with pretty much every character that he writes, which is very interesting. So it's good to hear how you use like the similar thing and apply it to your characters that can even be in the midst of an alien invasion, yet they still feel real because you're applying what they're feeling with what you've actually felt in your life as well.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's funny you should like mention Stephen King, because I was reading his book not so long ago called On Writing, and it's a tale of how he got into writing. And like throughout the book, there's little hints here and there of bits of his life which he's put into his books. So his mother used to work in a laundry pressing machine company which was called a Mangle. Stephen King a few years ago wrote a book called The Mangler. So there's many little Stephen King's a genius like that, because he'll go into his life and take out those moments in his life and exaggerate them to the point where you'll believe in his characters, and he's creating interesting stories from it. So even the simplest thing he's created of like his mother, the true story of his mother working in a mangle machine, became a story of like a possessed mangler machine which is thirsty for blood. That just shows how creative Stephen King and how much of a genius he is.
What would you say is your favourite screenplay that you've written, and one that you've read of somebody else?
That's a very, very good question. Very good question.
I'm expecting it to hear Lunatic 2 by Jason Momoa. I'm only joking.
Yeah, no, fair one. Could be worse, could be Lunatic 1. Written by Josh Ellis. Let me think. There's loads of good screenplays out there. I'll start with the ones that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed Aaron Guzikowski's Prisoners. I thought that was an incredible screenplay. I really like Carl Gottlieb's Jaws. Obviously, John Carpenter's Halloween, for the simplistic tale it is.
It's just like a ghost story, isn't it?
It is in a sense, yeah. Like Halloween, when you read that screenplay by John Carpenter, it reads just like a ghost story. And like how simple the story is, yet so effective on the big screen. It's just incredible. Like transition from screen page to filming. I'm reading one at the moment, which I've seen the film called Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That's really funny, really funny. I've also read Aaron Gazikowski's Friday the 13th, Part 13, which unfortunately didn't get made, which was an incredible piece, really good. Yeah, there's quite a few that I really, really like, well, mostly horror.
Did you read Halloween Returns by the writers of The Collector?
I did, yes. I thought that was a really, really good piece. Really good piece. It would have been a nice addition to the franchise, but I'm quite thankful in the sequel we got, because I thought the latest Halloween was a good addition. So
yeah, I agree.
I'm happy we got that one. Favourite one of my own? There's a couple. I've got one called Breaking the Mirror, which is pretty cool. Indebted, which is basically Death Wish, but with a supernatural twist to it. And it revolves around a tale of a guy who owes money to this gangster, and the gangster gets fed up of waiting for his payment, so he does a dastardly thing, which the hero in the piece vows revenge, and for years tries tracking him down, and he bumps into this old woman one day who does something even dastier. I don't want to give too much away without spoiling, but supernatural death wish, that's all it is. A supernatural death wish.
Sounds great.
And at the moment I'm quite happy with the piece I'm writing at the moment called Dear Doc, which is about a bored psychologist who starts having an affair with this married woman who ends up becoming, her husband becomes one of his patients.
Oh wow.
So that's a comedy I'm writing at the moment, which is looking good so far.
That's great to hear.
Thank you very much. We'll see if it's good by the time I hit like page 100. We'll see.
How many pages do you think that you write per screenplay? Like, what is your goal for the most that you've done, or the least? Like, is there a certain amount, or do you just write, and when you think you've wrote enough, that it's done?
I always try to. What you mean, like page count?
Yeah, page count. Yeah.
Right. I always like follow the industry standard, which is 95 pages, between 95 pages and 120 pages. I think the longest I've got to is 116. The lowest I've got to is probably 93.
Oh, cool.
So I always try to like hit those benchmarks as much as possible, but sometimes it take a lot of expanding of scenes. Like sometimes you have to expand scenes, like edit bits of dialogue just to make the page count go up. But then what runs parallel with that is when you do your second draft, you have to cut those bits out. So it's a catch-22 situation.
Thank you for your time today, and it's been really interesting and great to hear. As a writer myself, it's great to hear what for one, the process from the ground up to the finished product.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, it's like.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. I've still got like a couple of projects still to come out. I'm going to finish off with Dear Doc, and then I've got another story to tell, and then in the new year I'll probably get back to writing horror. So yeah, man, I'm buzzing to see what the future holds with these babies. Hopefully I can make some classics. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh Ellis, and good luck with the rest of your screenplays, and I'll look forward to reading them.
You're welcome. I'll see you in the movies. My friends.
Yeah. So hopefully now we get the call from Hollywood, and then we'll be rich, and I don't have to do another podcast.